Please, do not let them take her. The voice was barely more than a breath, trembling through the cold air like something already breaking. Cole Bennett froze beside his motorcycle, the engine still rumbling beneath him as the sound reached him again, faint but desperate, coming from somewhere deep in the trees off the narrow dirt road. He killed the engine instantly, and the sudden silence made the voice clearer. A woman. Weak. Terrified. He stepped off the bike, boots crunching over frozen gravel, his eyes scanning the dark forest line until he saw it. A cabin. Small. Isolated. And wrong. The front door was shut tight, a heavy chain wrapped around the handle from the outside. The windows were covered from within, but something moved behind one of them. Cole moved closer, every instinct from years on the road telling him to walk away. Nothing good ever came from places like this. But then he heard it again. A child crying. Soft. Exhausted. That was enough. He reached the door and grabbed the chain, his jaw tightening as he pulled. It did not budge. He stepped back, drove his shoulder into the wood once, twice, 3 times until the frame cracked, and the door burst inward with a sharp echo that seemed to ripple through the trees. The smell hit him first. Not rot. Not decay. Something cleaner. Controlled. And inside, huddled in the corner, was a woman clutching a small girl against her chest, both of them shaking like they had not known warmth in days. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Cole lifted his hands slowly, palms open, his deep voice softer than it had any right to be. You are safe now. The woman did not believe him. He could see it in her eyes. Wide, searching, calculating whether the man who had just broken in was another threat or the first chance she had left. The little girl buried her face deeper into her mother's shoulder, whispering something too quiet to hear. Cole glanced around the cabin, and that uneasy feeling crawled up his spine again. This place was not abandoned. The floor was clean. Too clean. No dust. No debris. A metal chair sat bolted to the ground near the far wall, its surface scratched and worn. There were marks on the floor. Drag marks. His eyes shifted to the far corner where a small black object blinked once with a faint red light. A camera. Watching. Recording. Cole's stomach tightened. Whoever had locked them in here was not gone. They were coming back. And for the first time in a long while, Cole Bennett felt something he had spent years trying to bury. Not fear. Something heavier. Responsibility. He looked back at the woman, at the child clinging to her, and then at the broken door behind him, knowing he had just stepped into something that was never meant to be opened. The sound of the broken door still echoed faintly through the trees as Cole Bennett stood in the dim light of the cabin, his eyes adjusting to the shadows while his mind moved faster than his body. He could feel it now, that quiet tension pressing in from all sides, the kind that never showed itself until it was already too late. He stepped further inside, slow and deliberate, his boots barely making a sound against the clean wooden floor. This place was wrong. Not abandoned. Not forgotten. Maintained. Controlled. He glanced back once at the shattered door, calculating distance, escape routes, time. Then his attention returned to the woman. She had not moved from the corner, her arms still wrapped tightly around the little girl. Her breathing shallow, but steady, like someone forcing themselves to stay conscious through sheer will. What is your name? Cole asked, keeping his voice low and even, careful not to startle her. The woman hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the open doorway, as if expecting someone to appear at any second. Then she spoke, her voice dry and fragile. Sarah. She tightened her hold on the child. This is Lily. Cole nodded slowly, lowering himself just enough to appear less threatening, his large frame still filling the space but no longer looming. I am Cole, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. Sarah studied him, searching for something in his face, some sign that would confirm or deny whatever fear had been keeping her alive until now. Lily shifted slightly in her arms, her small fingers gripping the fabric of Sarah's jacket. Her voice was barely audible. Are they gone? The question hung in the air like a warning. Cole did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his head slightly, listening. The forest outside was too quiet. No wind. No animals. Just stillness. The kind that meant something had already passed through recently. Not far enough, he said quietly. Sarah's face tightened, and for a moment it looked like she might collapse under the weight of that truth. Cole stood and began moving through the cabin, his movements precise, controlled, every step placed with intention. He passed the metal chair again, noting the scratches along its arms, the faint marks that suggested restraints without showing them directly. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He moved toward a narrow hallway at the back of the cabin, where a single door stood slightly ajar. The air felt colder there. He pushed the door open with 2 fingers and stepped inside. The room was small, too clean. A narrow bed sat against the wall, its sheets pulled tight, untouched. A single light fixture hung overhead, casting a pale glow across a surface that looked more like a temporary holding space than a place anyone lived. Then he saw it. On the wall above the bed, partially hidden behind a loose wooden panel, was something out of place. He stepped closer and pulled the panel aside. Photographs. Several of them. Old, worn at the edges. He reached up and took one down, his eyes narrowing as he looked at it. A man stood in the center of the image, younger, leaner, wearing a leather vest with a familiar shape on the back. Cole's fingers tightened around the photograph. It was him, or it had been years ago. The same posture, the same cold stare he barely recognized anymore. But that was not what made his stomach drop. It was what stood behind him in the image. His cabin, the same structure, the same trees, the same door. Cole exhaled slowly, a weight settling deep in his chest as the past he had buried clawed its way back to the surface. From the other room, Lily's voice broke the silence. "Mister, are you going to leave us here?" Cole closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them again, the photograph still in his hand. Outside, somewhere beyond the trees, an engine started. Low, distant, but getting closer. And in that moment, Cole Bennett understood one thing with absolute certainty. This was never just a cabin. It was a place people disappeared, and he had just stepped back into a world he thought he had escaped. The engine outside grew louder, cutting through the stillness like a warning that had arrived too late. Cole Bennett did not move right away. He stood there in that small back room, the photograph still in his hand, staring at the version of himself he had tried to forget. Younger, harder, the kind of man who did not ask questions about places like this. The kind of man who followed orders. His jaw tightened as the memory pressed in, not fully formed, but heavy enough to make his chest feel tight. He slipped the photograph into his jacket without thinking, like a reflex he did not want to examine too closely, then turned and stepped back into the main room. Sarah looked up immediately, her eyes searching his face for answers he was not ready to give. "Someone is coming," he said, his voice low but firm. There was no panic in it, just certainty. That made it worse. Sarah's grip tightened around Lily, her knuckles pale, her body instinctively shifting to shield the child. "We have to go," she whispered, but there was hesitation in her voice, like she already knew running was not that simple. Cole moved to the doorway and glanced outside. The forest that had felt empty moments ago now felt watched. The distant engine was closer, slow, and controlled. Not rushing, not careless. Whoever was coming knew exactly where they were going. That meant this place mattered. That meant Sarah and Lily mattered. Cole stepped back inside and looked around again, this time not as a stranger, but as someone who recognized patterns. The clean floors, the camera, the reinforced door. This was not random. This was a system. His eyes landed on the blinking red light in the corner. Without hesitation, he crossed the room and reached up, ripping the device from its mount. The wire snapped with a sharp sound, and the red light died instantly. For a moment, the silence that followed felt heavier, like he had just announced their presence instead of hiding it. "They were watching us," Sarah said, her voice shaking. Cole nodded once. They still might be. He crouched down in front of her, keeping his movements slow, controlled. "Listen to me," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "When I say move, you take Lily and go straight out that door. Do not stop. Do not look back. Follow the tree line to the road. My bike is there." Sarah shook her head almost immediately. We cannot outrun them, she said. They brought us here. They know this place. Cole held her gaze. That is why I'm not asking you to outrun them. There was something in his voice now. Something steady. Something that made Sarah pause despite herself. Lily looked up at him, her small face pale but focused. Are you coming with us? She asked. The question landed harder than anything else. Cole did not answer right away. Instead, he stood and moved toward the broken door, his eyes scanning the trees again. The engine was close now. Too close. He could hear gravel shifting under tires, the low rumble echoing between the trunks. He turned back to them. I will make sure you get out, he said finally. It was not the same as a promise, but it was enough. Sarah nodded slowly, swallowing whatever fear was still holding her in place. Cole stepped outside, the cold air hitting him sharp and clean, clearing his head in a way nothing else could. He moved quickly to his motorcycle, reaching into the saddlebag and pulling out a small roll of tools, his hands moving with practiced precision. Behind him, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then he heard it. A second engine. Another vehicle approaching from a different direction. His eyes narrowed. This was not a pickup. It was a sweep. They were closing in from both sides. Cole exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation settling into something cold and focused. He had been in situations like this before. Not here. Not with people who needed him. But close enough. He turned back toward the cabin and raised his voice just enough to carry. Sarah. Now. Inside, there was a brief moment of stillness. Then movement. Fast. Urgent. She stepped through the broken doorway with Lily in her arms, her face set with a kind of determination that only came when there was no other choice left. Cole stepped aside, giving them a clear path toward the trees. As they passed him, Lily's small hand reached out and grabbed the edge of his jacket for just a second, like she needed to make sure he was real. Then she let go. Cole watched them disappear into the forest, their figures swallowed by the shadows. Only when they were gone did he turn back toward the road. The first vehicle broke through the tree line moments later, headlights cutting across the clearing. Cole stood his ground, alone in front of the cabin, the past and the present colliding in a way that left no room for escape. And for the first time in years, he did not reach for a way out. He prepared to face what was coming. The headlights cut through the darkness like blades, sweeping across the cabin and locking onto Cole Bennett where he stood in the open, unmoving. The first truck rolled to a slow stop about 30 yards away, its engine idling low and steady, followed by the second vehicle coming in from the opposite side, sealing off the clearing. They were not rushing. They were not surprised. They knew exactly what they were walking into. Cole kept his shoulders loose, his breathing controlled, every sense tuned to the smallest movement around him. The driver's side door of the first truck opened with a quiet click, and a man stepped out, tall, broad, wearing a dark jacket that blended into the night. He did not draw a weapon. He did not need to. His confidence said enough. You picked the wrong place to stop, the man called out, his voice calm but carrying authority. Cole said nothing. His eyes tracked the second vehicle as two more figures stepped out, spreading slightly, creating distance but keeping him centered. This was practiced, organized, not amateurs. The first man took a few steps forward, stopping just short of the edge of the broken doorway. His gaze flicked briefly to the damaged frame, then back to Cole. You were not supposed to open that door, he said. Cole tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Then you should have locked it better, he replied. The man almost smiled, but did not reach his eyes. You always had a habit of making things harder than they needed to be. The words landed with weight. Recognition. Cole felt it immediately, a quiet shift in the air that confirmed what he already suspected. These are not strangers. Not entirely. He took a step forward, just enough to close the distance by a few feet. Ido. Not know you, Cole said, though part of him already did. The man studied him for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. That is the problem, he said. You used to. The second vehicle's headlights flickered slightly as the engine idled, casting uneven shadows across the clearing. One of the men shifted position, his hand resting near his jacket, ready but not yet moving. Cole kept his focus on the first man. You are looking for the woman, Cole said. It was not a question. The man's eyes narrowed, just slightly. We are looking for what belongs to us. Cole shook his head once. People do not belong to anyone. The man's expression hardened, whatever faint trace of patience he had fading. You walked away, he said. You left without finishing what you started. We cleaned up your mess. Now you come back and break one of our sights. The word sight hung heavy in the air, confirming everything Cole had already begun to piece together. This cabin, the cameras, the control, it was part of something larger. Structured, hidden. Cole felt the weight of the photograph in his jacket, a silent reminder that this was not new. Just buried. I'm not part of that anymore, Cole said quietly. The man stepped closer, his boots crunching against the gravel, his voice dropping lower. That does not change what you know. A pause. Then, sharper. Or what you are. For a moment, neither of them moved. The forest remained still, holding its breath as if it understood what was about to happen. Cole's gaze flicked briefly toward the tree line where Sarah and Lily had disappeared, calculating time, distance, whether they had made it far enough. He needed more time. You should leave, Cole said. It sounded almost like a warning. The man allowed a short laugh, humorless and cold. You are in no position to give orders. His hand moved then, subtle but deliberate, signaling the others. The men near the second vehicle began to shift, spreading wider, closing angles, preparing to move in. Cole saw it all in a single glance, the formation tightening, the intent becoming clear. This was not about talking anymore. This was about control. Containment. He rolled his shoulders once, loosening the tension that had been building, his stance shifting just enough to lower his center of gravity. He had been in worse situations, but never with something to lose. The man in front of him took one more step, his voice quiet but final. Last chance, he said. Step aside. Cole met his eyes, steady, unflinching. No, the word hung in the air, simple and absolute. For a fraction of a second, everything froze. Then the first man's expression changed, the last trace of restraint gone. Then you made your choice. And in that instant, the clearing erupted into motion. The movement came fast, sharp, and coordinated, but Cole Bennett was already in motion before the first man fully stepped forward. He pivoted slightly to the side, forcing their line to break, his eyes tracking the closest threat while his body stayed loose and ready. One of the men lunged first, reaching to grab him, but Cole shifted his weight and drove his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him off balance and sending him stumbling backward into the gravel. The second man closed in from the right, faster, more controlled, but Cole anticipated it, stepping back just enough to avoid the grab before striking low and forcing distance between them. He was not trying to win. He was buying time. Every second mattered. Behind him, the cabin stood silent, its broken doorway gaping open like a wound, the dark interior hiding the truth he had already uncovered. In front of him, the men regrouped quickly, their movements tightening, their approach more cautious now. They had underestimated him once. They would not do it again. The man who had spoken earlier did not rush in. He stayed back, watching, calculating, his expression unreadable but his posture tense. You are slowing us down, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. That is not going to help them. Cole did not respond. He did not need to. His silence was answer enough. The second vehicle's engine idled louder now, the headlights shifting slightly as if adjusting their angle, flooding the clearing with harsh white light that erased shadows and made every movement visible. Cole felt the exposure immediately. No cover, no darkness, just open ground. That meant one thing. They wanted control, not chaos. One of the men moved again, this time circling wider, trying to flank him. Cole adjusted his stance, turning just enough to keep them all in view, his breathing steady, controlled, each inhale measured. His mind was not on the fight. It was on the forest, on Sarah, on Lily, how far they could have made it, whether they had reached the road, whether they had found the bike. He needed more time. The man in front of him stepped closer, his patience thinning. You are not walking away from this, he said. None of you are. Cole's jaw tightened slightly. They already did, he replied. The words landed harder than any strike. The man's expression shifted just for a fraction of a second, enough to confirm what Cole needed. Uncertainty. They did not know how far Sarah and Lily had gone. They were guessing. That meant there was still a chance. The man turned his head slightly toward the others. "Spread out," he said. "Check the tree line." The order was immediate, controlled, but it carried urgency now. Two of the men broke off without hesitation, moving toward the forest, their steps quick but careful, scanning the darkness beyond the clearing. Cole saw it and reacted instantly. He stepped forward, cutting off their path, forcing them to slow. One of them moved to push past him, but Cole held his ground, his presence alone enough to disrupt their momentum. "Move," the man snapped. Cole did not. The leader exhaled sharply, his voice dropping lower, colder. "You think this ends here?" he asked. Cole's gaze did not waver. "It ends for them," he said. The man studied him for a long moment, then shook his head slightly, almost disappointed. "You always did have a problem understanding how this works." His hand lifted again, signaling a shift. This time, the approach changed completely. No more attempts to rush him. No more direct engagement. They began to spread wider, creating space, adjusting angles, forcing Cole to choose between holding his ground or chasing them into the dark. It was a trap. Divide. Isolate. Control. Cole recognized it instantly. He had seen it before. He had used it before. His chest tightened as the realization settled in. This was not just any group. This was trained, structured, and somewhere deep down, he knew exactly where that training had come from. The forest seemed to close in as the men disappeared into the shadows, their presence still there, but no longer visible, the sound of their movement blending with the quiet of the night. Cole stood alone in the clearing, the headlights still burning behind him, the cabin at his back, the past pressing in from all sides. And then, faint but unmistakable, from somewhere deeper in the trees, came the sound of a branch snapping. They had found something. Or someone. The sound came again, sharper this time, not just a branch but movement, fast and uneven, cutting through the stillness of the forest like something desperate, trying not to be caught. Cole Bennett turned toward the tree line instantly, every muscle tightening as his instincts took over. The men had heard it too. One of them called out from the darkness, low and controlled, confirming direction without giving away position. They were closing in. Cole did not hesitate. He broke from the clearing and moved into the trees, his pace quick but silent, weaving between trunks and low branches with the ease of someone who knew how to move without being seen. Behind him, the leader's voice rose just enough to carry. "Do not let them get to the road." That was all Cole needed to hear. Sarah and Lily had not made it far enough yet. He pushed harder, the ground uneven beneath his boots, the cold air burning his lungs as he followed the faint path of broken twigs and disturbed leaves. Then he saw them. Just ahead, partially hidden behind a fallen tree, Sarah crouched low, her body curled protectively around Lily, who was trembling but quiet, her small hands clutching tightly to her mother's jacket. Sarah looked up as Cole approached, her eyes wide with fear and something else now. "Urgency. They are everywhere," she whispered. Cole dropped down beside them, his voice calm but firm. "Listen to me. You're going to keep moving. Stay low. Do not make a sound." Sarah shook her head, panic breaking through. "They will find us," she said. Cole met her gaze, steady, unshaken. "Only if you stop." The sound of footsteps echoed faintly from behind them, closer now, careful but relentless. Cole glanced over his shoulder, calculating distance, angles, time. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph without thinking, his eyes flicking over it once more under the dim light filtering through the trees. This place. This system. It was not random. It never had been. He looked back at Sarah. "They brought you here for a reason," he said quietly. "Did they say anything? Anything at all?" Sarah hesitated, her brow tightening as she searched her memory through exhaustion and fear. "No," she said at first, then paused. "Wait." She swallowed hard. "One of them said something when they thought I could not hear. He said the next transfer would be tonight." Cole's chest tightened. Transfer. That word did not belong to chance. It belonged to structure, movement, routes. His grip on the photograph tightened slightly. The past and present were lining up in ways he could no longer ignore. Lily shifted beside Sarah, her voice small but clear. They kept talking about the list, she said. Both adults looked at her instantly. Cole leaned slightly closer, his tone soft but focused. What list? Lily frowned, trying to remember. A paper, she said slowly. They said my name was not on it yet. The forest seemed to close in around them as the weight of those words settled. Cole felt something cold move through him. Not fear, not panic, but clarity. This was not just about Sarah and Lily. This was part of something bigger, organized, ongoing, and he had been closer to it than he ever realized. A sudden crack echoed to their left, closer than before, followed by a voice calling out, sharper now. Over here. They had their direction. Cole moved instantly, his hand lightly guiding Sarah to her feet. Go, he said. Follow the slope. It leads to the road. Sarah hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded, pulling Lily with her as they moved forward, low and fast, disappearing between the trees once more. Cole stayed behind, just long enough to listen, to track the movement of the men closing in. They were tightening the circle. Coordinated, efficient. His jaw set as he turned in the opposite direction, stepping deliberately across the ground, breaking branches, leaving a trail that led away from Sarah and Lily. He did not look back. He did not need to. He knew what he was doing, drawing them away, buying time. The forest swallowed him as he moved deeper into the darkness. His presence loud now, intentional, impossible to ignore. Behind him, the voices shifted, redirecting, following the new path he had created. Good. That was the point. Cole Bennett kept moving, every step pulling the danger further from the two people who no longer had anywhere left to run. And as the sound of pursuit closed in behind him, one thought settled clearly in his mind. This was not just a rescue anymore. This was a reckoning. Branches snapped behind Cole Bennett as he moved deeper into the forest, each step loud on purpose, each movement designed to pull attention away from the only direction that mattered. The cold air cut through his lungs, sharp and steady, but his pace never faltered. He could hear them now, closer than before, their footsteps no longer cautious but committed. They were following him. Good. That meant Sarah and Lily had a chance. He veered slightly downhill, forcing his trail through thicker brush, making it harder to track anything beyond the obvious noise he created. The ground dipped unevenly, and he used it, stepping heavier when he needed to be heard, lighter when he needed to disappear for just a second before drawing them back in again. It was controlled chaos, something he had learned long ago, something he had hoped never to use again. A voice cut through the trees behind him. He is heading east. Another voice answered, sharper. Do not lose him. Cole slowed just enough to listen, then changed direction abruptly, cutting across their line instead of away from it. Confusion bought time. He knew that. He had taught it once. The realization hit harder than the cold air. This was his work, his methods, refined, reused, weaponized. His jaw tightened as the past pressed in again, not as distant memories, but as patterns he could see unfolding around him. He pushed forward, then stopped suddenly behind a thick cluster of trees, dropping low, letting the noise fade completely. The forest swallowed him for a moment. Silence returned. He counted his breathing. 1, 2, 3. The footsteps behind him slowed, then spread out, searching, uncertain. A man moved past his position, less than 10 yards away, scanning the ground, his head turning sharply as he tried to pick up the trail. Cole watched him pass, unmoving, his presence erased by stillness. This was the part they always forgot. Noise drew attention. Silence created doubt. The man moved on, calling out to the others, his voice lower now, less certain. Cole waited until their focus shifted forward again before rising slowly, his eyes tracking their positions. He had pulled them far enough. Now he needed to make sure they stayed off Sarah's path. He stepped out deliberately, snapping a branch under his boot. The reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Voices sharpened. There. Cole did not run this time. He moved just enough to be seen, then slipped between the trees again, keeping them locked onto him, guiding their direction like a current pulling debris downstream. Behind him, the forest opened slightly, the slope leveling out toward a faint stretch of road that cut through the trees like a thin gray line. He knew that road. Gravel. Narrow. Barely used. His bike was there. If Sarah reached it, she had a chance. A real one. But then something shifted. A new sound. Not behind him. Ahead. An engine. Low. Controlled. Approaching from the opposite side of the road. Cole slowed instantly, his body going still as his mind recalculated everything in a single moment. They were not just chasing. They were cutting off exits. He moved forward cautiously, staying low, until he could see through the trees. Headlights appeared between the trunks, sweeping slowly across the ground, stopping just short of the road. A third vehicle. Waiting. Cole felt a cold weight settle in his chest. This was bigger than he thought. More organized. More prepared. His eyes flicked back toward the direction Sarah had gone, then to the men closing in behind him. The gap was shrinking. Fast. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself, forcing his thoughts into focus. There was no clean way out anymore. Only choices. He reached into his jacket and felt the edge of the photograph again, the past pressing against his present like a reminder he could not ignore. He had helped build something like this once. Maybe not exactly this, but close enough that the difference no longer mattered. And now it was here, in front of him, hunting the same people he was trying to protect. Cole straightened slightly, his posture shifting from evasion to decision. He could keep running, keep drawing them away, or he could turn this around, break the pattern, force them to react instead of control. Behind him, the voices grew louder, closing in again. Ahead, the engine idled, waiting. Cole Bennett stepped forward out of the shadows, just enough for the headlights to catch the edge of his silhouette. If they wanted to control the field, they would have to deal with him first. And this time he was not going to lead them away. He was going to make them stop. The headlights locked onto Cole Bennett, freezing his shadow in place against the thin line of gravel road as the third vehicle idled just ahead, its engine low and patient like something waiting for a signal. Cole did not move at first. He let them see him, let them register his presence. Behind him, the sound of men pushing through the forest grew louder, branches snapping, boots grinding against dirt as they closed the gap from the rear. He was exactly where they wanted him, but that worked both ways. The driver's side door of the vehicle ahead opened slowly, deliberate, and a man stepped out into the wash of light. He was older than the others, his movements controlled, his posture calm in a way that suggested authority without needing to prove it. He did not rush. He did not call out. He simply looked at Cole as if recognizing something that had been missing. "I was wondering when you would show up again," the man said, his voice carrying across the road with quiet certainty. Cole narrowed his eyes slightly, studying the figure in front of him, the tone, the stance, the familiarity buried under years of distance. "You have the wrong person," Cole said. The man gave a faint shake of his head. "No," he replied. "I have the exact right one." The footsteps behind Cole broke through the tree line, the other men emerging into the open, spreading out but stopping short of rushing forward. They held position, waiting, watching. This was no longer a chase. It was a meeting. Cole glanced once toward the road behind the vehicle, measuring the distance, the angle, whether Sarah and Lily could reach it unseen. The man in front of him noticed. "They are not getting past US," he said calmly. "You should know that." Cole's jaw tightened. "You are not looking for them," he said. "You are looking for control." The man's expression shifted slightly, something close to approval flickering across his face. "You remember more than you pretend to," he said. A pause. Then, more direct. "That is good. It means we can skip the explanations." Cole did not respond. He did not need explanations. He needed time and clarity. The man took a step closer, the headlights framing him in sharp contrast. His features now more visible, lines etched into his face, eyes that had seen too much and chosen to use it. "The cabin was one of many," he continued. "Transit points. Clean, quiet, efficient. You helped design the system. You remember that part." The words landed like a weight dropping into still water, sending ripples through everything Cole had tried to bury. He did remember. Not the details, not every face, but the structure, the logic, the way it had been explained to him back then. Move them quickly. Keep them unseen. No attachments. No questions. Cole exhaled slowly, his voice steady but lower now. I walked away. The man nodded once. You did, he said, and we adapted. Another step forward. But systems like this do not disappear. They evolve. Behind Cole, one of the men shifted, glancing toward the forest as if checking for movement. The circle was tightening again, but slower this time. Controlled. Intentional. The man in front of Cole tilted his head slightly. The woman, he said. She was not supposed to be here yet. Wrong timing. Wrong place. His gaze sharpened. But the child, he stopped there, as if choosing his words carefully. Cole's focus snapped him. What about the child? The man held his gaze for a long moment, then gave a faint, almost amused smile. That is where things get interesting. A silence followed, heavy and deliberate. Then, softly, her name was not on the list, because she was never meant to be processed. Cole felt something shift inside him, something colder than anger, sharper than fear. Then why take her? The man's eyes flicked briefly toward the trees, then back to Cole. Because sometimes, he said, you do not realize what something is until you already have it. The words did not make sense at first. Not fully. But they did not need to. Not yet. Behind Cole, a faint sound carried through the trees. Gravel. Light. Careful. Someone moving closer to the road. Sarah. Lily. The man heard it too. His head turned slightly, his attention shifting for just a fraction of a second. That was enough. Cole moved. Not forward. Not back. Sideways. Just enough to break the line, to force the men behind him to react, to pull their focus away from the road for one critical moment. The man's expression hardened instantly. Do not let them. Through, he snapped. The clearing erupted into motion again, but this time the direction had changed. It was no longer about capturing Cole. It was about cutting off the escape he had just reopened. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the headlights, a small figure was getting closer to freedom. The moment Cole Bennett moved, everything fractured into chaos, but not the kind they controlled. It was sudden, sharp, and just enough to break their rhythm. The men closest to him reacted first, stepping in to contain him. But that was exactly what he wanted. Their attention snapped back to him, just for a second, just long enough for something else to slip through the cracks. From the darkness beyond the trees, a faint crunch of gravel carried across the road. Small, light, careful. Cole heard it and did not look. He could not. Any sign of recognition would give it away. Instead, he drove forward into the nearest man, forcing him back, creating noise, creating distraction, turning himself into the only problem they could focus on. Stay on him, one of them shouted, the urgency in his voice rising now, no longer controlled, no longer certain. Good. That meant Sarah and Lily were close. Very close. The man from the vehicle stepped forward again, faster this time, his calm exterior cracking just enough to reveal the pressure underneath. You are making this worse, he said, his voice harder now. Cole did not answer. He did not need to. His actions were louder than anything he could say. He shifted again, stepping into another angle, forcing two of the men to adjust their positions, pulling them further from the road, widening the gap behind them. Every inch mattered. Every second counted. Behind the line of bodies and headlights, something moved. A shadow crossing open ground. Then another. Sarah. Cole caught it in his peripheral vision. Just a flicker, just enough to confirm she had made it. Lily clung to her, small and silent, her face buried against Sarah's shoulder as they moved toward the edge of the road where the bike waited. The engine of the third vehicle revved slightly, as if sensing movement, the driver shifting inside, ready to react. The man in front of Cole turned his head sharply, following the same instinct. There, someone called out. The word cut through everything. Heads turned. Focus shifted. And just like that, the window began to close. Cole moved without hesitation. He stepped directly into the path of the man who had spoken, blocking his line of sight, forcing him to slow, to adjust, to lose that critical second. It was not much, but it was enough. Sarah reached the edge of the road, her movements breaking into a run now, no longer hiding, no longer careful. The bike stood where Cole had left it, dark and silent, waiting. She dropped to one knee for a split second, fumbling with Lily, helping her climb onto the seat, her hands shaking but determined. "Hold on to me," she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. Lily did not respond with words. She simply held on. Back in the clearing, the man's patience snapped. "Stop them," he ordered, his voice sharp and absolute. One of the men broke away, sprinting toward the road, his boots pounding against the ground, closing the distance fast. Cole saw it and reacted instantly. He moved to intercept, stepping into the man's path, forcing a collision that knocked them both off balance. The man recovered quickly, but it was enough to slow him, enough to delay him by just a few seconds. On the road, Sarah found the ignition, her hands fumbling only once before turning it. The engine roared to life, loud and sudden, cutting through the night like a signal that could not be ignored. Every head turned. Every movement shifted. The man from the vehicle took a step forward, his expression darkening as the situation slipped out of his control. Cole stood between them and the road, his chest rising and falling steadily, his eyes locked forward. The bike surged forward, tires gripping the gravel as Sarah pushed it into motion, the headlight snapping on and slicing through the darkness ahead. She did not look back. She could not. The man's voice cut through the noise one last time, colder now, more dangerous. "This is not over," he said. Cole did not respond. He simply watched as the bike disappeared down the road, carrying Sarah and Lily away from the place they were never meant to escape. And for the first time since this began, the balance shifted. Not enough to end it, but enough to change what came next. The roar of the motorcycle faded into the distance, swallowed by the winding road and the dense wall of trees beyond it, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the chaos that had just filled it. Cole Bennett stood in the middle of the clearing, his chest rising slowly, his eyes fixed on the empty stretch where Sarah and Lily had disappeared. For a brief moment, nothing moved. No one spoke. Then the shift came, subtle at first. The men around him adjusted their stance, no longer rushing, no longer reacting, but recalibrating. The urgency that had driven them seconds ago hardened into something colder, more deliberate. The man from the vehicle stepped forward again, stopping a few feet away from Cole, his gaze no longer following the road but settling back where it belonged. "On him. You bought them time," he said quietly. "That is all." Cole did not answer. He already knew that. This was not over. It had never been about one escape. It was about everything that came after. The man tilted his head slightly, studying him with a kind of measured curiosity. "You always did think in moments," he continued. "Short plays. Immediate wins. But this," he gestured faintly toward the road. "This is a long game." Cole's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Then you should start worrying," he said, "because they are out of your system now." The man almost smiled, but again, it did not reach his eyes. "No one leaves the system," he replied. The words were calm, but they carried a certainty that made the air feel heavier. Around them, the other men began to reposition, not closing in, not retreating, but creating space. A different kind of formation, not for capture, for control. Cole noticed it immediately. This was not over. This was shifting. One of the men near the second vehicle spoke into a handheld radio, his voice low, controlled, relaying information that did not need to be loud to be understood. The network was already moving. The road Sarah had taken was no longer just an escape. It was a path they could follow. Cole felt it then. Not fear, not regret. Something sharper, a realization. He had given them a direction. The man in front of him seemed to read that thought before it fully formed. "You see it now," he said. "Every move you make creates another one for us." Cole held his gaze, unflinching. "Not every move," he said. The man paused just slightly as if considering that. Then he took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You could have stayed gone," he said. "You could have kept pretending you were not part of this anymore. A beat. But you came back. And now you are involved again, whether you like it or not." Cole's hand brushed lightly against his jacket, where the photograph rested, the past pressing against him like a reminder that refused to fade. "I'm not the same man," he said. The man nodded slowly. "No," he agreed. "You are not." Another pause. Then, quieter. "That is what makes this dangerous." The words lingered between them, not as a threat, but as a fact. Behind them, one of the vehicles shifted slightly, its engine revving as if preparing to move. Another man climbed into the driver's seat, his focus already turning toward the road. The hunt was not stopping. It was expanding. Cole glanced once more toward the darkness where Sarah and Lily had gone, measuring distance he could not see, time he could not control. They had a head start, but not enough. Not against something this organized. The man followed his gaze, then looked back at him. "You cannot protect them forever," he said. Cole's voice was quiet, but firm. "I do not need forever." The man studied him for a long moment, then gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging something he had not expected to find. "Then we will see how long you can hold the line," he said. He stepped back, raising his hand slightly. The signal was immediate. The men began to move, some toward the vehicles, others spreading out again, preparing to follow the road, to pick up the trail, to continue what had already begun long before tonight. Cole did not move to stop them. Not here. Not now. This was not the place. This was just the beginning. He stood alone in the clearing as the engines came to life one by one, the sound building, growing, carrying into the forest like a promise that would not fade. And as the vehicles turned toward the road, following the path Sarah had taken, Cole Bennett made a decision. He was not going to run from this again. Not this time. Because whatever this system had become, whatever it had grown into while he was gone, it had just made one mistake. It had let him see it. The last engine disappeared down the road, its sound fading into the distance until the forest returned to a heavy, unnatural silence, leaving Cole Bennett alone in the clearing with nothing but the broken cabin and the weight of what had just been set in motion. He did not move right away. He stood there, listening, tracking the direction of the vehicles long after they were gone, committing every detail to memory. The angle of the turn, the rhythm of the engines, the way they accelerated once they cleared the trees. They were not rushing blindly. They were following a plan. That meant he needed one too. Cole exhaled slowly and turned back toward the cabin, his boots crunching softly over the gravel as he crossed the clearing. The broken door hung open where he had forced it earlier, the chain still dangling loosely, a reminder of how this had started. He stepped inside, the air colder now, quieter without the presence of Sarah and Lily, but the tension remained, embedded in the walls, in the floor, in the silence itself. This place still had answers. He just needed to find them fast. His eyes moved across the room again, this time sharper, more focused, no longer reacting but searching. The metal chair, the scratches, the camera mount he had torn down. None of it was random. It was structured, intentional, built for a purpose. He moved toward the back room again, pushing the door open with more urgency this time. The photograph he had taken earlier still pressed against his chest, but now he needed more than that. He scanned the walls, the floor, the edges where something might have been hidden in plain sight. Then he saw it. The same loose wooden panel above the bed, slightly misaligned, like it had been moved more than once. He stepped closer and pulled it free completely this time, revealing not just the photographs behind it, but a narrow compartment carved into the wall. Inside, there was a folder. Plain, unmarked, too clean to belong in a place like this unless it mattered. Cole took it out carefully, his hand steady, but his pulse sharp in his ears. He opened it slowly, flipping through the contents as his eyes moved faster with each page. Names, rows of them, typed, organized, some crossed out, some highlighted, dates beside them, locations, transfer points. His jaw tightened as the pattern became clear. This was not just a list. It was a system map. And then he saw it, near the middle of the page, a name written in smaller text, not part of the main list, almost like an afterthought. Lily. No last name, no date, just the word pending beside it. Cole felt something shift deep in his chest, something heavier than anger, sharper than anything he had felt so far. She had not been on a list, because she was not supposed to be processed yet. She was waiting for a decision, waiting for someone to decide what she was worth. His grip on the folder tightened slightly. This was bigger than he thought, bigger than a single cabin, bigger than a few men in the woods. This was organized, documented, scalable, and somewhere behind it, someone was running it all. Cole flipped the page again and stopped. At the bottom, partially cut off, was a location he recognized. Not from the night. From years ago. A warehouse. Old. Industrial. A place he had only been once, back when he did not ask questions. His breathing slowed as the pieces came together. This was the next step. The next transfer point. The next place Sarah and Lily could be taken if they were found. Or the place he could reach before they did. From outside, the faint echo of engines returned, distant but growing again. Not the same ones. Different direction. Reinforcements. The system was already adjusting. Cole closed the folder and slipped it inside his jacket, his decision forming with absolute clarity. He stepped out of the cabin and looked toward the road, the darkness stretching ahead like a path he could no longer avoid. This was no longer about escape. This was about ending it. And for the first time since he had walked away from that life, Cole Bennett knew exactly where he needed to go next. The cold night air rushed past Sarah Whitmore as the motorcycle sped down the narrow gravel road, the engine roaring beneath her hands as she gripped the handlebars tighter than she ever had in her life. Behind her, Lily clung to her waist, small arms wrapped tight, her face pressed into Sarah's back, silent but trembling. The road twisted through the trees, uneven and unpredictable, but Sarah did not slow down. She could not. Every second mattered. Every mile put distance between them and the men who would not stop. The headlight cut through the darkness in a narrow beam, revealing just enough of the road ahead to keep moving, but not enough to feel safe. Nothing felt safe anymore. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing through everything that had just happened, every word, every look, every moment that led them here. Then Lily's voice came, soft but clear against the wind. Are they still coming? Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes fixed forward. Not if we keep going, she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. But even as she said it, she knew the truth was more complicated. People like that did not stop. They adjusted. They followed. They waited. The road curved sharply, and Sarah leaned into it, the bike responding under her, the tires gripping the loose gravel just enough to hold. She had never ridden like this before. Not alone, not with everything on the line. But there was no hesitation left in her now. Only motion, only survival. A few miles ahead, the forest began to thin, the trees pulling back just enough to reveal a wider stretch of road, smoother, more open. Sarah slowed slightly, just enough to catch her breath, her arms shaking from the tension of holding steady for so long. She glanced back for the first time. Darkness. No headlights. No movement. For a brief moment, hope flickered. Maybe they had made it. Maybe they had enough distance. But then she saw it. Far behind them, barely visible between the trees, a faint glow. Headlights. Distant but there, following the same road. Her chest tightened instantly. Hold on, she said, her voice sharper now. She pushed the throttle again, the engine responding with a deeper roar as the bike surged forward. The distance between them was not enough. Not yet. The open road stretched ahead, but it felt exposed now, like they had traded cover for speed, safety for visibility. Lily's grip tightened around her. Mom, she whispered. Sarah did not answer. She could not afford to look back again. Not now. Not with the road narrowing ahead where the asphalt cracked and dipped toward an old bridge that crossed a shallow river. The structure came into view quickly, wooden planks reinforced with metal rails, worn but still standing. Sarah's mind raced. If they crossed it, they would be visible from both sides. No cover, no escape if something blocked the other end. But stopping was not an option. She leaned forward and accelerated, the bike hitting the bridge with a hard thud as the tires rolled over the uneven boards, the sound echoing loudly into the night. Halfway across, the wind shifted, carrying something new with it. A different engine. Not behind them. Ahead. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked up. At the far end of the bridge, a vehicle pulled into view, its headlights flaring to life and flooding the narrow path with blinding white light. Her breath caught. They had cut them off. The space closed instantly. No room to turn. No way around. Behind her, the distant headlights grew brighter. They were being boxed in. Lily's voice broke through the rising panic. What do we do? Sarah's hands tightened on the handlebars, her mind racing faster than the bike beneath her. For a fraction of a second, everything seemed to slow. The road, the light, the sound of the engines closing in from both directions. Then she made a choice. Not safe, not certain, but the only one left. She leaned hard to the side, steering toward the edge of the bridge where the wooden railing dipped slightly lower, her eyes locking onto the dark slope beyond it. If they stayed on this road, they were trapped. If they left it, they had a chance. The front tire hit the edge, the bike jolting violently as it broke through the weakened rail, the sound splintering into the night. For one brief moment, they were airborne. Then gravity took over. The bike dropped down the embankment, crashing onto the rough ground below with a heavy impact that knocked the air from Sarah's lungs, but did not stop her grip. She held on. She had to. The engine sputtered, then caught again, the machine still alive, still moving. Above them, the headlights swept across the bridge, searching, confused, thrown off by the sudden disappearance. Sarah did not look back. She turned the bike toward the darkness along the riverbank and pushed forward again, deeper into the unknown, carrying the only thing that mattered away from the trap that had almost closed. Around them, the river roared softly beside them as Sarah Whitmore forced the motorcycle forward along the uneven bank, the tires slipping and catching against mud and scattered rocks, each second stretching into something fragile but alive. Her arms trembled from the impact, her breath uneven, but she did not slow. Behind her, Lily still held on, small and silent, her presence the only thing anchoring Sarah to the moment. Above them, on the bridge, the headlights shifted wildly, searching, confused by the sudden disappearance. Voices echoed faintly in the distance, sharp and frustrated, but they were no longer close. Not close enough. Sarah pushed forward, guiding the bike along the curve of the river until the terrain began to rise again, leading back toward a narrow dirt path that cut away from the water and into thicker trees. She followed it without hesitation, letting the darkness swallow them once more. Minutes passed, then more. The sound of engines behind them faded completely, replaced by nothing but the wind through the branches and the steady rhythm of the bike beneath her. Only then did Sarah allow herself to slow. She brought the motorcycle to a stop in a small clearing hidden deep within the trees, the engine idling before she finally turned it off. Silence returned, heavy but no longer threatening. Just quiet. Real quiet. Sarah sat there for a moment, her hands still gripping the handlebars, as if letting go would make everything fall apart. Then she felt it. Lily's small arms loosening slightly, her breath warmer now, steadier. "Are we safe?" Lily whispered. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, letting the question settle before she answered. "We are," she said softly, and for the first time, she believed it. A faint sound came from the edge of the clearing. Not engines, not boots, something slower. Familiar. Sarah turned sharply, her body tensing again, ready to move, to run, to fight if she had to. But then a figure stepped out of the shadows. Cole Bennett. His presence was quiet, controlled, but different now. Not just a man passing through. A man who had chosen to stay. Sarah exhaled, the tension breaking just enough to let relief in. "You made it," she said. Cole nodded once, his eyes scanning the area before settling on them. "They will not follow here," he said. "Not tonight." He stepped closer, his gaze dropping. Briefly to Lily, who looked up at him with tired but steady eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily reached out, her small hand finding the edge of his jacket again, just like before. This time, Cole did not move away. Sarah watched them, something shifting inside her as the weight of everything began to settle. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Cole looked back toward the direction of the road, then beyond it, as if seeing something much farther away. "They will keep looking," he said. "That does not stop." Sarah's expression tightened slightly, but she nodded. She already knew that. "Then what do we do?" Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out the folder he had taken from the cabin, holding it for a moment before handing it to her. "We stop them," he said. Sarah looked down at it, confusion mixing with something deeper as she realized what it meant. Not just survival, something bigger, something that would not end with running. Who had found them in the dark was no longer running from what he had been. He was hunting it. And this time, he was not alone.